I'm back unexpected live because the former president of the United States is now reacting to the news that just came to us from the Colorado Supreme Court. They just voted 4-3 to disqualify him from being on the ballot. I want to take you to this live so that you can see just exactly what is going on here. Again, he's reacting to all of this in real time, and we're going to go over to our friends, I believe over at the national desk, who have this coverage. I want you to see what he's saying. He's basically reiterating some of what we've discussed before, that you basically have the courts getting in the way, right, of everything that is going on. So again, this is kind of an impromptu thing. I am joining you live. I want to take you out here to this so that we can see him. There we go. Again, these comments are coming to us. You can see from the national desk here on YouTube, and I want to listen in.
The farm, we're not doing that. So we ended the estate tax, and farms and small businesses now, they don't have to go into hock and end up losing everything. And the parents are very happy about that. They're looking down and they're saying, I'm so happy. I love President Trump, because that was a big thing. I ended the NAFTA disaster, the worst trade deal ever made, and replaced it with the USMCA, the best trade deal ever made. And that was a giant win for Iowa farmers. I took on the communist Chinese like no administration in history. Communist China was doing a number on the farmers, and you know it better than anybody, bringing hundreds of billions of dollars pouring into our treasury when no other president had gotten 10 cents from China. Nobody had ever brought in any money. I brought in hundreds of billions of dollars from China. In fact, China is not now doing very well, and a lot of people think it was because of what I did with respect to all of the hundreds of billions I brought in. And Biden is unable to cancel it because it's so much money that it's having a hard time canceling. It's hard to say, oh, gee, let's not do that for hundreds of billions of dollars. And then I gave the farmers $28 billion straight out of the tariffs I took in from China, a large part of which came right back to the state of Iowa, right? That's why my people in the back, you know, my great geniuses, sir, please don't say that too often, because you sound very conceited when you say that you guarantee that Iowa is going to vote for you. You guarantee Iowa. I said, I got him $28 billion, of course. Who else is going to get him $28 billion? I said, go out and buy more land and larger tractors. Do you remember that? But you know what? They stuck with me, because we had a period of 6 or 7 months with China. You know, they're great negotiators. They were playing hardball, but we ended up winning, and they buy now. We made a trade deal with China. I don't even talk about it because of COVID, but we made one of the greatest trade deals ever made. They buy $50 billion worth of product from this country, and they were buying nothing before that. They were buying nothing. So it was an amazing thing that happened, and it's an honor to have done it. And I do believe I could say that, but I won't say it, because I will not say that, because my people have said. So I will not guarantee it, but I pretty much guarantee it, okay? Let's vote against Trump, because he gave us $28 billion. I don't know. Somehow they got a problem with that one, don't they, huh? The people that are running against us, and who, frankly, were not in favor of farmers. You know, Ron DeSanctimonious was not a friend of the farmer. He fought against the Farm Bill. He fought against ethanol, hard, very hard. Now all of a sudden he loves ethanol. About 2 weeks ago it started, right? No one gets abused on trade worse than American agriculture, yet no other president lifted a finger for you. Nobody lifted a finger for you in Iowa, nobody. Under my leadership, we will have a great rebirth of loyalty to the American farmer and loyalty to the American flag. And I'm going to pass something that's so important. We were just about set to do that. We had the greatest economy in history. We were just about set, and then we hit COVID. COVID came, a gift from China, from Wuhan. I told them it came from the Wuhan lab. I said it right from the beginning. I never changed. Trump, you ever see the hats? Trump was right about everything. Some of the things I don't want to be right about, like I think our country's in more danger now for World War III than ever before. I don't want to be right about that. But we have a man who's grossly incompetent, and he's talking about nuclear weapons and negotiations. He doesn't even know what the hell he's talking. He can't even find the stairs to get off a stage. All right? There they are. There they are. They're all over the place. Jump off the front, but don't walk into the back wall. You ever see that? He finishes a speech, if you call it that. He did a news conference the other day, and he goes, okay, let's see. You know, I did news conferences in the White House. You. He did it. Jim Jones. Is he here? Oh. The guy says, Mr. President, what about this? What about that? What about that? I would like to tell you the following. He's reading the answer, meaning he knows the questions, and they write down the answer. He reads the answer. If I ever did that, they would impeach me a third time, right? They would impeach me a third. We beat them twice. You know, the impeachment, then they found out I was right. They're all saying we really shouldn't have impeached him. But actually, the Republicans, and Jim Jordan's great, and Jamie is doing a great job, but the Republicans are being much nicer because they're saying, let's do an inquiry first. They didn't do an inquiry with me. I walk in, they impeached me. So these are bad people, bad people. I will pass the Trump Reciprocal Trade Act. So that means if China or any other country make us pay a 100% or 200% tariff, which they do, we will make them pay a reciprocal tariff, identical tariff of 100 or 200% right back. We'll take in billions and billions. Now, what will happen is they'll end the tax. You know, they'll end the tax. But we're all set to get that. We would have had that quickly. I will revoke China's most favored nation trade status, and we will impose stiff penalties on China and other trade abusers because they abuse us. But many people abuse us on trade and even the military. At the same time, I will end Joe Biden's war on American energy, and we will, ready? Drill, baby, drill. We will drill. We'll put straws in the ground and we'll have oil coming up. We have more oil than anybody, oil and gas. We have more than any other country in the world. And, you know, we took it from fourth place to first place in just a short period of time. We were going to make so much money. We were making so much. We were energy independent. Think of that. Gas prices, oil prices down so low. Record numbers in some cases, but down so low. And we were going to sell it all over the world, fill up our strategic reserve, which I was doing very cheaply by comparison to what they're doing now. He used the money just to have a better election. He used a lot of the money. It's strange. It's the lowest point it's ever been right now. That's meant for military. That's meant for real problems, not to keep your gasoline price down so that you can get some votes during an election. But they brought it down to the lowest level in order to try and remain relevant for an election. It's very terrible what they've done. They've done a lot of bad things. As part of our common sense energy policies, I will once again stand up for Iowa ethanol like I have done. I've been your savior. Many people did not want anybody to stand up for it. I just promised as president, I issued a historic rule declaring that E15 would be made available all year round. You know what that means. I did it all year. It was 8 months, and I did it all year round. Nobody thought that was going to happen, and letting them use the existing pumps. Now, that doesn't sound very glamorous, but it was hundreds of millions of dollars would have had to be spent. That would have been an increase in price to you. And I let them use the existing pumps. Very simple. I brought in experts. I said, well, what's the difference? They said, well, sir, the old ones are actually better. I know that because a lot of times equipment is much better. The older equipment's a lot better than the new equipment. And like grass cutters. All you have in a grass cutter today is environmental computers and equipment. They forgot to put blades on it to cut the grass. So sometimes you'd rather have like a blade. Give me a blade to cut the grass. In contrast to my unwavering support for Iowa ethanol and agriculture, Ron DeSanctimonious wants to literally bankrupt Iowa farmers. That's what he'd do because his policies are horrible. DeSantis spent his entire political career vindictively trying to kill the ethanol industry, voting again and again to devastate Iowa farmers by eliminating the billions of dollars generated each year from ethanol and wiping out 48,000 Iowa jobs. He voted against it. Unlike DeSantis, I will be your ethanol champion for 4 more years. You have 4 more years of security. And I will also rescue the ethanol industry by canceling crooked Joe Biden's insane ethanol-killing electric vehicle mandate on day one. Everything has to be electric. Electric cars, they don't go far. They cost too much. They're all going to be made in China. The United Auto Workers are going to all be voting for Trump because this mandate's going to kill all jobs, all jobs. They've lost so many now to Mexico. 32% went to Mexico. Many went to Canada, and the rest went to China. Whatever we have left, it's peanuts compared to what it should have been. But this electric car thing is just crazy. If you want to drive, maybe, let's say you're here. If you say, let's take a drive to beautiful, safe Chicago. It's so safe. Let's drive there. How many times would you have to stop? About 9? You know, it's just crazy. It's these people, and they know it. They know it's crazy. They don't want to even listen to people. Same thing with the trucking industry. They want to have electric trucks. So a truck, a big, beautiful truck like Peterbilt or one of them, they can go, the big ones, they can go 18-wheelers. They can go about 2,000 miles, they say, 2,000, on a big tank of diesel. And an electric truck comparable, which you can't be comparable because you need so much room for the battery. Most of the area that you're going to carry your goods going to be battery. But assuming we take away that problem, which is not easy to take away, you'd have to stop approximately 7 times to go 2,000 miles, right? You go about 300 miles, and they don't want to change that. You'd think after if I were sitting there and that was explained to me and verified, I would say, of course you're not going to do that. We'll destroy our supply chain. But the Attorney General would agree with me. I mean, you don't have to be a great expert to know. You can't do that. One goes 2,000 miles and the other one goes 300 miles, and you don't have any capacity because half of it's got to be for battery. The batteries are massive. Crooked Joe puts China first. He puts Asia first, Ukraine first, illegal aliens first, environmental maniacs first. He puts everyone first. But he puts America last, he puts Iowa last, he puts our workers last, he puts our farmers last, and he puts everything that's good last. And by the way, they abandoned Iowa. You saw that, right? They left Iowa. I don't think he's going to do too well here. You know, they used to be together with them, but they've gone now to another state, good state also, by the way, but they've left a tradition. I said, we're never going to do that. We're never going to do that to Iowa. You know, it's got a great political tradition. And I kept Iowa first. That was me. I put Iowa first, and I will put America first every single time. I put our country first. So job number 1 when we return to the White House will be to restore peace through strength. Peace through strength. For 4 straight years, I kept America safe. I kept Israel safe. I kept Ukraine safe. There was no talk of this. And I kept the entire world safe. A great gentleman, Viktor Orban, Hungary. He's the leader. He's the boss. He's everything you want to call him. He's a tough guy. He's tough, very well. I mean, he knows Russia very well. He knows Ukraine very well. They were saying, what do you think is going on with the world? He said, what's going on with the world is Trump isn't there anymore. We didn't have any of these problems. He said, what would you suggest? Bring Trump back as president of the United States, and you won't have any of these problems. He said, when Trump was there, these leaders, China, Russia, all of them, they were afraid of the United States. They feared the United States. They respected him. And I thought it was a nice statement, so I repeat it as often as I can, because I know one thing, the press is not going to repeat it. You know, you might as well repeat it yourself. This is a lesson. Repeat it yourself, because they're not going to be repeating it. I'm the only candidate, I think you know this, who can make a very important promise. So I think the world's in more danger than it's ever been because of the power of weaponry, and I will be the only one that can say this with great surety. I will prevent World War III. World War III. We're very close. I don't know if you feel it. I don't know, Madam Attorney General, if you feel it, but we're very close to World War III when you see these discussions taking place. You know, we had an axiom, never, ever talk nuclear, never mention the word nuclear. It was not a word that was mentioned because the power is so ridiculous, and we didn't mention it. Now, all the time, you're hearing nuclear from Them. From them. You're hearing it from other countries. It was unacceptable. It was a word that you couldn't say. And all of a sudden, you're hearing that word all the time. And this wouldn't be a war like with army tanks running back and forth, shooting at each other, World War I, World War II. This would be obliteration. This would be the worst thing there's never been. This would be obliteration. You cannot use the word. You cannot discuss that word. But I rebuilt our military to a level that it's never been before. And that includes that, our nuclear stockpile. I have no choice. I hated doing it, but it's all tippy-top. It's all really in the best of condition now. We had stuff that we had no idea if it even worked. It was 40 years old, and the wires to the phones didn't even work. Nothing worked. And everything's been rebuilt. We've done a great job, really an amazing job. And the only reason we had to do that is because China's building their heart out with nuclear, and Russia, as you know, has comparable to us. So it's a very dangerous position when you see the words that are being spewed. And I'm saying, and I'm watching his language and his body language, I'm saying he's saying the exact opposite of what should be said. We're very unsafe, and we have 11 months to go, That's a long time. They can do a lot of damage in 11 months. Under the Trump administration, we had the most secure border in U.S. history by far. We built 561 miles of border wall and got Mexico to give us 28,000 soldiers free of charge. That was much more than, as I said, we'll get Mexico to pay for a big portion of it. This is much more. We have 28,000. I had 28,000 soldiers free of charge. I said to them, you're going to have to give us 28,000 soldiers. We need that. They said, no, we will not do that. I said, of course you will. They said, we will not do that. Why would we do a thing like that? And I said, you're going to have to do it. I'm sorry, but you're going to have to do it. And they said no. And then I said, here's what's going to happen. On Monday morning at 7 o'clock, we're going to impose a 25% tariff or tax on all of your goods, including the cars that you stole away from us in terms of manufacturing of cars. They have 32% of our car production was taken away years ago by Mexico. 32%. But every car is going to have a 25% tax on it, and we're going to take in so much money. And then they turned around and they said, we would like to make a phone call to Mexico, please, sir. They came in the room 5 minutes later, and they said, it would be our great honor to supply you with 20,000.
Okay, everyone, we have been listening here to Donald Trump out in Iowa speaking to supporters there. He's coming out to speak just as we got that ruling in from the Supreme Court. And I can tell you, we're going to continue listening in here, but thanks to some of the commentary in the chats. I see you want me to jump in and talk to you guys a little bit. I was reading your comments, so thank you for all of those. This is sort of unexpected. I just figured I'd pop back on because I saw this was coming to us. We want to thank our friends over at the National Desk who are bringing this to us live on YouTube. And we are just watching their channel right now as Donald Trump speaks to supporters in Iowa. Now, at the very beginning, he was commenting on what had just broken. And so if you're just tuning in right now, we're still listening to see if he goes back to that. He's been talking about energy, about the threat of World War III, et cetera. But what he initially started with was, in fact, this ruling that just came to us out of the Colorado Supreme Court. It's historic. They have decided that they can enact what is known as the 14th Amendment, a section of the 14th Amendment that makes it so that the actual state can prevent him from being on the primary ballot. So in this case, Colorado is making the decision for Republican voters that you can't vote for Donald Trump. There's an expectation that you can see other states like Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Nevada actually follow suit here. And if that's the case, keep in mind, by the way, the justices in that court, in the Colorado court, they're all Democrats, or appointed, I should say. They're not supposed to be that partisan, but they were appointed by Democrat governors. And so whether or not there was that bias, I would think there's a little bit of it, right? But it was a 4-3 vote. Now this is going to get picked up by the Supreme Court. We found out the other day the Jack Smith case, by the way, hasn't even been heard. Keep that in mind, guys. Has not even been heard. So the evidence hasn't been presented as to whether or not there was an insurrection by the president. Meanwhile, the Supreme Court is looking at whether you can even use that particular variation on the law, a law that was put in during Sarbanes-Oxley to go after white-collar crime. Can you even use that to go after the president for the actions of that day, or the people for that matter? I spoke earlier today with Alan Dershowitz, and he suggested that there might be something in favor of Trump there that would sort of rule in his favor, but not entirely. He said he suspected that there might be a little something in there for everyone. So we'll see what we can do with that. I'll have to have him back on the program and we'll ask a little bit more, because when I spoke to him, it was before this news came out. But pretty wild to think that a state can say, okay, we don't like this guy, we're keeping him off the ballot, without actually even a court deciding that he is guilty of this 14th Amendment issue. It's pretty crazy. I mean, and by the way, Jack Smith has not tried him for insurrection. He's not going after him specifically for insurrection. So this is something else. And it's, again, I would say just another example, shall we say, of the left going really sort of wild. I'm seeing a lot of familiar faces here. Jake is saying that he wanted me to know if there's a join button in the YouTube app. I think there's a join button to join the team. You can join the team if you would like. Team Regan, Team Trish Regan. We just started that here on YouTube, and then you get like a blue star next to you. Mike O'Donnell's got one. Hey, Mike, good to see you again. Other states will follow. I agree with you, Davine Frequency. I totally agree with that. And so this is setting up a really, really challenging, messed up situation. He's talking about the border right now. I just want to continue listening to this a little bit as we try to decipher just exactly what's going to happen next. But I think that the sort of synopsis, the quick Cliff Notes version is Colorado comes out with this, decides they don't want him on the ballot. So they're making this move. They're citing the 14th Amendment. Legally, that's kind of a tall order. And so this is why the Supreme Court is already planning to take it up. I anticipate that it will be expedited. It will move even quicker. They weren't going to take it up, I think, until March. The same time, by the way, as the D.C. court was taking it up. One interesting little note that I will include for you in all of this. Let me go to the actual order from the court. This is interesting because they're actually basically putting everything on hold until it gets to the Supreme Court, or at least until January. Let me see if I can find this for you. I know we played it earlier in the show. And I'd like to cite this because basically there's a little clause at the end saying that this is stay until it's actually been ruled on further. Look, it's going to have to get expedited because you can't live in a world where basically any particular state can make a decision as to whether or not they want somebody on the ballot or not. I mean, that's pretty egregious.
We have no choice. No country can sustain this. We will restore law and order to our communities, and I will direct a completely overhauled DOJ to investigate every radical, out-of-control prosecutor, of which we have many.
This is what they're afraid of.
In America, I have a guy named Deranged Jack Smith. He's a deranged person. He happens to be after me. You know, the great one.
He has to be careful. Remember, there's a gag order on some of this stuff.
Has been taking stuff out of the White House or taken out wherever he was. He was a senator for 50 years. He's got tremendous amounts of stuff. He had it brought to Chinatown. What's that all about? And then after it was brought, that was distributed to different places. Chinatown.
Anyway, again, and forgive me, I should have turned the former president's volume back up as we listen to him here, but I was just listening in to see what else he was saying, if he was going to comment any further on that. We did hear him go after Jack Smith a little bit. Now, judge ruled the other day that it was a modified gag order. In other words, he could say certain things about Jack, but I think other people are somewhat protected there. This is truly, I mean, you know what? If you were a legal scholar or legal student, I think that you would find this pretty fascinating. I'm pretty horrified, just as an American, that power can get so distorted. And really, like, let's not forget what our founding fathers had intended. Our founding fathers never wanted things to get out of control like this. Our founding fathers very much wanted to ensure that we lived in a representative democracy where every person really could have the opportunity to express and have a view, and that you never had a situation where the federal government and federal powers got so out of control. In this case, it's kind of like the inverse right now. These little states are getting so out of control. These little states, like Colorado, the expectation that Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Nevada may follow, are so out of control that they may actually be trying to decide who can be on the ballot, who cannot, when there hasn't even been a presentation of the evidence. And so we're talking about, people that are really, really just salivating to try and keep him down. And you got to ask the question, like, why? Why is this so incredibly important to them? And I think that we have seen exactly why. I mean, I've played you some clips. They are just rabid in terms of how much they do want to go after him. Listening back in again, let me turn up some of his audio.
A deranged prosecutor. He's a deranged.
Oh, he's going after the prosecutors again.
The good news is people get it. That's why my poll numbers are so high, I believe. Because, I would really have, I think we'd be winning by a lot, but now we're winning by numbers that nobody can believe. I think it's why our poll numbers, because they see this persecution that goes on in this 2 tiers of justice.
He's citing some of his poll numbers.
They don't like it. They don't want that. This is not what America is all about. So I appreciate everything, and I appreciate all the support we get, because that makes a big difference. When you have poll numbers where where we're like literally 80 and 90 points higher in some cases, and some of these guys. We have guys running like from Arkansas. He's been at 0 for 7.
So one of the things I just want to point out is that today we did get the New York Times polling from New York Times Siena, and it showed, even the New York Times had to admit it, that Donald Trump was ahead by 2 percentage points nationally over Joe Biden. And then when you drilled down into the numbers, what you actually saw was that in a lot of the swing states, a lot of the states that they wouldn't have anticipated him being able to make ground, you actually saw him succeeding pretty significantly. I mean, just to go through some of the numbers, there were 6 of these, and just incredible to see how much the spread was. In fact, in some cases, like 10 points. And so this is really, I would imagine, scaring the living daylights out of the establishment. I've talked about why this may be. I mean, why are they so worried? They're likely worried because there was a piece in the New York Times the other day. Some of the documents that he may have made off with there to Mar-a-Lago include some very detailed assessments of what actually happened within some of those 3-letter agencies to squash his candidacy back in 2015, which means he could use this as leverage, perhaps to go after them again. I'm not entirely certain that's completely it, but it may explain some of the hysteria. They're really worried that he's going to go in and he's going to try and take them all down, thereby uprooting the entire system. And that would be, for them, obviously a really, really bad thing. One would hope that if you can squash out some of the corruption, et cetera, that actually helps America to emerge in a stronger, better place. But right now, we don't even know the extent of the corruption. And so we know some of it, right? We know that there are things that were made up. We know what happened with the Hunter Biden laptop, where they tried to tell us it was all fake. And it's pretty startling when you have like the deputy director of the CIA putting together a list of his 50 friends so that they can come out with this. Look, most people would take the CIA at its word, right? Like, it's kind of a big deal. The CIA is saying this. And yet it turns out, guess what? The FBI was investigating that darn laptop. And it turns out that the whole dossier thing, that was actually paid for by Clinton's team for opposition research. And the idea that somehow this was hidden from the people for so long, I think that just doesn't sit well. And so the fear is, he gets back in there, he's going to expose more of it. I still question why we didn't see more, right? Like the Mueller report, like all of this, like I had anticipated maybe that we would just get a little bit more. Mueller report actually proved that there was nothing there in terms of him sort of being on a puppet, shall we say, of the Russians. And yet that was the narrative that was fed to the public over and over and over and over again. And so I think people are looking at this and they're like, wait a second, like if this can happen to him, does it happen to me? And that's kind of an alarming place to be, right? As a society. Let's listen in a little bit more here. Let me push up his volume if I can. Let's see. Okay, we may be having a technicality, but again, I just want to reiterate that when he spoke in the beginning, what we saw actually, here we go. what we saw was a president who's very angry at how they're trying to undermine the people, certainly the people of Colorado, via these legal maneuvers, legal gymnastics.
They have graffiti all over the place. Graffiti, graffiti, graffiti. The streets, they look like, I mean, I drove into Washington a few weeks ago for a court case. One of the many. I should get to know it very well. I can't get a fair trial on Washington. The whole thing is ridiculous. But for a court case, I'm driving over a road where it's almost all paper, garbage. And, you know, you can see paper. I know paper. I know cans. When cans start to literally rot, when paper is rotting, it's been there for a long time. Nobody cleans up anything. The medians, the dividers, they're all broken and falling down. It looks like an absolute slum. And when foreign leaders come into Washington and they see that, I don't care how good you are as a president, they go back and they say.
So I want to point out that this is a pet peeve of his, you know, the disarray sometimes of cities, et cetera. He has run a lot of buildings, right, throughout his career. And so the cleanliness of those buildings is something that's kind of top of mind and pretty important to him. I had a friend who lived in one of his buildings once, and she said it was actually the building that his daughter lived in too. And she said it was fantastic, actually. It was the cleanest building she ever lived in New York. So I guess that's an endorsement on the cleanly front. Look, there are a lot of things going wrong right now in the country. That is just the reality of where we are right now. And whether or not it can change, look, there's will to change it. I think that the people have expressed that will. The problem that we're up against here is the system itself and whether it will enable and allow for someone like him to succeed if the people so want him to. I mean, I think one of the reasons why you have the whole cast of characters hanging on in the Republican primary right now is because they expect that there's going to be a ruling that says he can't actually run. And look, I think, I'm just going to tell you guys, like if the Supreme Court decides that, this is a pretty fair court, then you have to say, all right, this is the law of the land. The Supreme Court has made this decision. But if the Supreme Court also decides, wait a second, like Jack Smith was out over his skis, and as such, the president absolutely can run again, well, then you also have to accept that, right? Like we have to be a society of law and order, and we have to understand the law of the land. In this particular case, you got a Supreme Court in the state of Colorado that is out on its own before this case has even been heard, making this determination. And this is something that, you know, a lot of people in some of these fancy law school places, we were talking to Alan Dershowitz just a few minutes ago, right? And he is somebody who feels that they're trying to get him no matter what. You look at Larry Tribe, who's his colleague there at Harvard, another well-known law professor, and Tribe has been a big proponent of the 14th Amendment. So a lot of people have wanted to use this as a reason to get him. And so whether, you know, the whole thing was sort of a trap or not, it's neither here nor there. At this point, they are going to use whatever they can to try and take him down. Whether they're successful at it or not will be a whole other thing. This will get ratcheted up, as I said, all the way to the Supreme Court. It will be expedited. And so now, actually, I think the left has done themselves a disservice, because if they really don't want him to win, they don't need to go after him like this. The more they go after him, the more the public actually wants him to succeed, including some people in the middle. I mean, that's what some of the poll data is showing us over and over and over again, because it just doesn't sit well. I mean, why should it? Anyway, I'll quickly check back in here. Let's see if he references Colorado again. And we want to thank our friends at the National Desk. You can follow them on YouTube as well. They're covering this here.
Sexual or political content on our children. And I will not give one penny to any school that has a vaccine mandate or a mask mandate. A mask mandate. And as I said before, something that's very popular, I can't believe I have to say it, but I might as well. I will keep men out of women's sports. Is that okay? You see the weightlifting records? They're being broken by hundreds of pounds One stood for, I think, 18 years, over a quarter of an ounce. They're coming in, they're wiping it out like 100.
Oh my goodness, he's covering a lot of ground. He's covering a lot of ground here. Wow. Just pretty amazing. You know what? He can talk for hours. He likes to talk. He likes the crowd. He likes the energy of the crowd. And he right now has a motivation to talk, right? The Colorado court just handed that to him. So again, this will continue for a while. I encourage you to go and watch it. I do thank our friends at the National Desk for allowing us to creep in and watch some of this. I want to remind you, I will be back with more tomorrow. Hey, subscribe if you haven't. Do me that favor. Subscribe to the show. Share the show. Share the clips. Comment on the clips. I think it's great. I love having you guys all here. Just quickly, I want to go to some of your comments before we close out, because I really do appreciate all that you guys you do. So yeah, seeing a lot of familiar, and sorry for the audio challenges. We're working on that. We'll get there. But it is good to see you. I see Mike is still there, and Don and hey Don, you came back as well. So thank you for that. Hey, I just think this is insane. This is, from a legal standpoint, pretty amazing. This is indeed historic. This is the first time any state Supreme Court has tried something like this. We're living in unprecedented times. Make sure you subscribe. You hit the bell. You can also subscribe to my newsletter over on Trish Regan Media. We have a new site that's coming out, trishreganmedia.com. And I will see you right back here tomorrow.